This is Success Story Series Episode 2. Today we have Professor Siri Terjesen is a very successful academician. At a young age, she is currently serving as an associate editor with one of the premier universities in Florida. And she has more than 10,000 citations on Google Scholar as a researcher, one of the great achievements at her young age. I would like to invite Tatiana Mendes to introduce Professor Siri Terjesen.
Dr. Siri Terjesen is Associate Dean Research and External Relations and Phil Smith Professor of Entrepreneurship at Florida Atlantic University. She's also a professor at the Norwegian School of Economics in Bergen, Norway. She has served as a professor and director of the American University Center for Innovation in Washington, D.C., and was co-PI of the NSF I-Corp site grant to commercialize tech-based entrepreneurship. She's also an affiliated researcher with Catalyst New York, Indiana's University Institute for Development Strategies, and Ratio Institute in Stockholm. Siri's teaching at undergraduate, graduate, and executive education levels has received several awards, including FIU College Business Most Outstanding Teacher, and also Most Outstanding Faculty Member from the American University Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life. Siri's research on entrepreneurship, corporate governance, and strategy has been published in more than 75 articles, 2 books, and manuscripts. This includes World Bank, U.S. Small Business Administration, and also she has received 10,000 citations on Google Scholar. She publishes in leading journals such as Academy of Management Review, Journal Management, Journal Operations Management, and so on. Her research is featured in international media, including Bloomberg, Times, and CNBC. Siri is a former associate editor of Academy Management Learning and Education, and is current editor of Small Business Economic, Industry Innovation, MAGMA, and a member of Entrepreneurship, Theory and Practice, and Corporate Governance International Review. Prior to academia, Dr. Terjesen was a management consultant with Accenture on projects in the US and Germany. Siri was also a competitive marathon and ultra-distance runner representing the United States, England, and Queensland international competition, including individual bronze at the World 50K 2006 and winning over 40 marathons around the world. So Siri, thank you for coming, and thank you for this valuable time that we respect, and we're gladly that you have come with us.
Thank you. I am so honored to be here with you, Tatiana. It's wonderful to meet a terrific PhD student, and then of course, your mentor, Justin Paul, who's known to so many of us for his contributions around the world. So thank you for giving me the time to talk with you today.
Thank you, Professor Siri, for accepting our invitation to be our guest to participate in the Success Story series. Success Stories always help people, young people, to get inspired, and storytelling is always useful for people in 20s and people in the teenage to get inspired. So our motivation is to inspire college students as well as the new generation to think about, or to understand the benefits of different careers, especially the academia. How do one achieve success in academia and so on? You are one of the role models in the world academia. I would say that Professor Siri Terjesen is chosen today for this session because of her achievements, and she has unmatching achievements compared to several other professors, even compared to the industry leaders. And with this introduction, I would like to straight away start this face-to-face interview with Professor Siri Terjesen to understand and to convey some message to the public, that some success mantras and some messages to the audience. You are a very successful professor at a young age. I would say that maybe in early 40s, by 40 you would have achieved a lot of laurels in your life, and you are serving as an associate dean of leading university in America. What are your success mantras and what are your success secrets?
You're too kind. I don't know that I've been so successful as you suggest, but it's been fun to have this journey. Something I learned early on was time management. So as Tatiana shared, I was also an elite runner representing England and later the United States in world competitions. And it was back then that I was doing my PhD. So I was trying to manage my time. So for example, I would have to run all over the UK and sometimes fly to places in Europe or Asia for competitions. And I would be reading the articles, and I would even fall asleep at night sometimes writing up what I thought. And that helped me later, because later, for example, I also have 3 children who are 8, 8, and 10. And it is a challenge to try to manage other people's lives. So time management is really important. And then the second big one is apply the strategy frameworks that we teach our students to your own life. And think about, for example, you have to be able to say yes to some things, but you also need to be able to say no to others. And then to think about how you can build, for example, economies of scale and scope in the respective tasks of academia.
Thank you. So very important lesson and takeaway, time management. That's very, very, very prerequisite in academia and in other fields also to achieve success. What are the skills that you would suggest, people should focus on? What kind of skills are required to transcend horizon in academia and succeed in academia?
Thank you. That's a great question. And I'll first start by saying, I think there are many different careers in academia. So whatever university I've been at, I've seen that people could add a lot of value to their business school and to their university through different paths. But certainly one of the shared commonalities for being, for example, a tenured faculty member is to be able to publish research that's interesting and relevant. So kind of keeping tabs on that is super important. And in order to do that, you need to be a great thinker, but you also need to be a great writer. And I think that that's an iterative process that is very important at all stages of our career, to think before we write before we think, and work in those cycles, and be willing to throw away, something that we've worked on a long time for what happens to be a better idea that comes later.
Yeah, thank you. So next question is related to the advantages and benefits of being in academia. Some people would say that industry jobs are better, they might get a better pay package, but I would say that academic jobs have its own charm, because academicians have not only monetary benefit, but also a lot of fringe benefits, which otherwise industry captains or industry leaders do not enjoy. So what do you think, and what kind of benefits or advantages of serving in academia compared to industry jobs in your view?
So that's a great question. For me, a very important value in academia and in life is freedom. I really value the freedom to select the projects, select the research, how it's enacted, and that's really important to me. I also value all of the opportunities to coach and mentor and learn alongside my students. And that's something that you can't always get in corporate. There's been lots of research on careers over the years, and we know that people's priorities will naturally shift regardless of the career path that they choose. What I like about academia is that you still have the flexibility to enact and transform your career along the way. Whereas if you work in some corporate or other traditional organizations, you may actually need to leave that organization or leave that occupation in order to self-actualize your new goals.
Do you think young people should consider academia as their first choice career? And if so, why do you think so?
I think it can be for the right people. And the advice that I would give for academia would be similar to other career paths. You need to develop what we know in management as a realistic job preview, RJP, which is to understand what you're getting into. One thing I've learned from other academic fields in history is that obviously history, there's fewer jobs, the trajectory and growth is much lower. So one faculty member at Stanford makes everyone read her website about the realities of the career before applying. And I think the same for us. We should certainly make everyone aware of the great benefits to work with amazing students, to solve interesting problems that you're motivated and passionate about. But we should also make sure that people understand that this can be 80 to 100-hour weeks, especially early on in your career, to get the kind of acceleration that you need for later. And like all careers, there are lots of challenges along the way, especially with work-life balance or even the cultural fit of finding the right university and the right department.
Mm-hmm. So my next question is, in academia, there are public sector institutions and private sector universities, especially in America, there's competition between private sector and public sector. For example, students, they sometimes get confused which college to join, which university to choose, and those kind of things. Do you have any suggestions for students to decide and choose what university, and how do they actually select the best universities possible or best courses possible? And what do you think about the competition between universities?
That's great. Justin, do you want me to address that at the undergraduate, at the graduate level, or both?
Both, yeah.
Okay, so at the undergraduate level, it's so essential that essentially the 18-year-olds who are making these decisions all over the world understand the net present value of their future career paths and their decisions now. So for example, in the US, we have seen extremely high levels of debt for undergraduate degrees. And I have personally met many people who are even in their 40s and still paying down their undergraduate loans, because it's not uncommon in the US to see $100,000 in debt. So it's so imperative to do that. There are great resources in the US. iPads at the Department of Education has some wonderful resources for US students, but that's important. And there are other databases out there that can show what is the value of that degree, even not just the university, but the degree at the university. Here at Florida Atlantic University, I'm very proud that our tuition is only $5,200 roughly per year for a business degree. And our students are on average getting jobs that are $45,000 to $50,000, even $55,000 straight out of undergraduate. So you can see that the net present value and the payback is instant. But if you were to take a more expensive degree in America for undergrad, like say $40,000 a year tuition plus $20,000 a year room and board times 4 years, and then get a job that's $35,000 a year, well, it's going to be quite impossible to pay back that debt. It's so important. You know, there's been lots of research now that debt is not only financial, but it's also psychological, and it can prevent one from getting ahead to the next steps of life. So people who are in debt don't marry as young, don't have children as young, don't get on the property ladder in terms of buying their own place. So it's really important, that decision. Now for graduate schools, that is especially important when you're thinking about the career field. So certain graduate programs in business have excellent trajectories for finance. Others are strong in marketing. Others are strong in strategy generally, or international business, and it's important to find the right one. And for a PhD program, it's actually quite easy to see what the placements were, because on average, universities are only taking in, at least in business programs, not economics, 3 to 4 PhD students a year. So you can see where those past PhD students have placed, and you can see their publications. So that's really important. And of course, finding a fit with the advisor and the long-term research interests is super essential.
Thank you. Thank you. Very, very, very useful answer. So let's go on to COVID situation now, because everybody is discussing about COVID-19 and its aftermath and its impact on students and so on, and universities as well. So America has been known as a destination for students from all over the world, and they were used to come to America to study, in graduate school, even undergraduates. So do you think that the COVID-19 will change the situation? Do you think that students will continue to come to America? And what are your advices for students from other countries, those who want to come to America and study? Do you think that American universities can still continue to attract them? And do they need to take any extra precaution or Do you think that America will remain as a country of opportunities for them?
That's a great question. There's so many layers to that because currently right now we're facing the coronavirus travel restrictions, but we're also facing the coronavirus hits to the economy, right? So if your parents were hotel and restaurant proprietors, were quite successful anywhere else in the world, unfortunately, due to the shutdowns, they probably have less disposable income right now to make that decision. And then the second piece is, what is the trajectory? So for example, what are the immigration laws that allow an outstanding individual from, say, Korea, India, China, those are typical recruitment territories for the US, to then be able to stay in the United States and have a great career. So that is certainly something that we need to watch, and different presidential administrations have obviously very different views on immigration. And then the third piece is just the overall culture of what is an American university versus what I consider to be our closest competition, which would be the British universities, like where I did my PhD, and the Australian universities, where I started my career. And certainly they also offer different cultures of the university, as well as different immigration parameters for staying, and also different travel restrictions. It also depends on the university. So some universities are incredibly dependent on a flow of international students. Not only are they tuition dependent, but they need those students to be paying full freight, which is often what you get with wealthy international students. But other universities, like mine here at Florida Atlantic University, is not necessarily dependent on international students. We love having them here, but it's not a big component of our budget.
Thank you. Yeah, next question is for the benefit of researchers. You have excelled in research and published a lot of articles in premier journals, and based on your experience of getting acceptances and getting rejections, suppose in case if I have to ask you, I also serve as editor these days. I'm editor-chief of International Journal of Consumer Studies, which gets about 1,300 submissions a year. And then I also serve as an associate editor Journal of Business Research. And I would like to, it would be great in case if you can articulate 2 or 3 specific points, specific do's and don'ts for researchers.
Thank you. That's a great question. And I think that you'll have lots of good lessons as an editor of some terrific journals. The first piece is you need to learn your craft and fit the model. So I like to talk about Gustav Klimt, who is a great European painter from the last century. And he painted these beautiful gold portraits that he's quite famous for, but he also did landscapes early on and learned the craft that way. And I think that's also a good lesson for academics. We can certainly begin to make impactful contributions, but we need to learn the craft. I'm sure when you evaluate journals articles that come in, you're looking, do these fit the model? And that's certainly an important contribution. So learning the craft and fitting what we're looking for. But number 2 is, especially early on in our careers, a focused contribution in an area can be so essential. What I have behind me are just a small smidgen of all the business books that are available and knowledge and resources in the world. And it's impossible to get to know this whole literature. So it's really neat if you can drill down in one area and focus on that, something to be known for, but also something where you know the literature so well that you know what's missing from it.
Thank you. Tatiana, would you like to try next question?
Yes, I want to ask you, Dr. Terjesen, do you think business education is still in a growth stage? And do you think an MBA will be a widely acceptable degree during the next 10 or 20 years?
That's a great question, Tatiana, and it affects, of course, your future career as well, since you'll be headed into the job market in a year and a half. I do have extremely high hopes for business education, but I do think the model is changing. So as we've seen across the US over the last decade, really, there's been a decline in full-time MBA programs. And that's because it's really hard for people to justify 2 years out of the workplace to be full-time in like an 8 to 5 program. So those are really on the decline. And we've seen schools like Iowa, for example, cancel those programs. And Wisconsin has had many big conversations about that. And it's been canceled other places too. But what is growing is the more modular programs that are delivered just in time and as individuals can fit them around their careers. So for example, here at Florida Atlantic University, we've had about a 5% growth in our graduate programs, even during this COVID pandemic. At the undergraduate level, I think there's continued growth because again, if you go to resources like iPads or others online, you can see that a business degree has terrific financial payoffs later and hopefully also satisfies other people's other life goals that folks would have. So I see tremendous growth there. In fact, we've seen a 10% uptake in our undergraduate degrees again during this last 9 months of the pandemic. So I think business education is still very valued, but the modularities of delivery are going to change.
So you are a professor of entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship is these days being debated in the aftermath of COVID-19 because people are thinking about safe jobs versus entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs had golden time before COVID-19. So what would you suggest to the new entrepreneurs? For example, someone who is graduating and someone who wants to be an entrepreneur, what kind of avenues or what kind of specific sector that you think that entrepreneurs will have more opportunities?
Thank you. That's a great question. Something that I've been focused on even before the COVID pandemic was technology-based entrepreneurs. So we've had a program here at FAU and also at my prior university, American University, to work with the National Science Foundation I-Corps program. And there we work with people at our university and in the community who'd like to start tech-based businesses. And that technology could be in healthcare, it could be in logistics, it could be in education. But I think those new technologies and innovations are going to be absolutely so essential. And for those who have existing businesses, it's certainly about shifting the business model. We've had some great examples here in my community in South Florida of very high-end restaurants that actually shifted to being high-end grocery stores where you could, and also delivery services. And I think that we'll just have to keep watching those models and they're going to emerge. But certainly if we look at the stock market, we can see the value of the healthcare and the technology stocks over time, even despite some downsides, they just pull right back up. And that's scalable, not just to our region of South Florida or your region of Puerto Rico, but also to the rest of the United States and the rest of the world. Thank you.
Maybe the last question. You have studied or worked in different regions in the world, ranging from Europe, England to Australia to America. So based on your global life and based on, I would say that you are a true global citizen, which is unique qualification, unique experience, which others don't have. So what are your success message in case if we have to put it like in one sentence or two sentences or one or two specific points, success message to the young people, those who want to achieve success?
That's another great question. It's hard to bottle it into just a couple of things. I do think the most important piece is identifying role models and mentors. And so a role model is someone that you look up to, but they don't necessarily know you. And a mentor is someone who you know and of course look up to, but they can give you feedback. So that's very important. And then the nature of that feedback should really be radical candor, which is a wonderful recent book where that person is willing to give you feedback, not only on the positive things, but also on the areas that you have for growth so that you're constantly improving. And then related to mentors and role models, it's important to have what I would describe as a mosaic of many different mentors, not just one role model, not just one mentor, but just like you would see a mosaic tile, many different things that you can find in these individuals and that you can value. And to really look to each individual, but also each experience that you have as something where you can learn. You can learn what to do well, and you can learn what not to do well. So hopefully those will be great lessons. And a final piece is just to try to get as many experiences and mosaics as possible so that you know what fits you best. I feel very lucky to have had that and lived so many different places and had so many different careers that I could choose this career and this place. But I think that's important for others, and especially early on.
So takeaway is role models and mentors. One need to have role models and mentors to work hard and to think about achieving success. So let's all have role models and mentors in our life so that we can succeed. Thank you very much, Professor Siri.
Well, thank you. And I think that you're doing this in your program, right? Because you're bringing on academics from all over the world who have unique experiences, and you're presenting them to your viewers, which I think is awesome, because then they can see the different models and see what resonates with them.
Yeah, we will do that. We will have this series, two interviews per month. So the idea is to have about 20 role models, presenting some 20 role models over next 1 year time. Thank you very much, Professor Siri.
Well, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to see you both. And thank you for this real service to the community, not just to those of us who are already scholars and trying to make the most of their careers, because I'm excited to watch the other videos, but also to those who are considering this career. This is a wonderful service that, as you know, didn't exist when we were applying to PhD programs and thinking about academia.
Yeah, I wish you get Nobel Prize one day in your life, because you have that much achievements. And if you continue at the same pace, I'm sure you will get either Nobel Prize or something similar to that in 10 years' time.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'll be very happy to continue to have this
you have
career.
that achievements, Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both so much. Have a wonderful day there, and best wishes to everybody at home who's watching.
Thank you. So best wishes.